welcome back to the Money Bear podcast. Today we've got my Canadian friend Ellyce Fulmore on. Ellyce, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. So Ellyce and I have been internet friends for I want to say like 2 years now, and she is a beast on TikTok. You've been doing all of the things. Are you still doing? Tell me everything you're doing. Are you still doing like one-on-one coaching? Or are you mostly program based? I know you're writing a book. Tell us about what you're doing.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I feel like every month it changes what I'm doing. So I was doing a lot of business coaching specifically for ADHD entrepreneurs and then doing one-on-one financial coaching. And then I'm currently running the NeuroSpicy Money Method, which is a group program for managing your money with ADHD. And that's about to end in a couple weeks here. So that'll be like the first round. And yeah, I'm kind of taking a step back from one-on-one coaching for a while because as you mentioned, I'm writing a book and that's taking up most of my energy. So I'm focusing on that. And then I have a lot of exciting new products that will be coming out kind of in the first half of the new year. So
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
excited. No, every time I see your page, I'm always like, she is doing so much. And I guess that's just like a theme with us finance creators, any kind of
yeah,
entrepreneur. It's like we take on so many things because it's so exciting to like take on new things. And then at the flip
yes.
side, there's this little bit of like, oh, but what if this opportunity never comes again? I have to take it, you know?
Yeah, it's honestly like it's so bad for me because I get so excited about everything, but then I end up
Yep.
taking up too much of my plate. And yeah, my girlfriend always says I'm the idea machine. Like I
Yep.
literally come up with a new business idea every day, like not exaggerating. And I have to like rein myself in and be like, okay, we can't start 18 businesses at once. Like what's the most important and try to focus on that.
Oh yeah, no, it's the shiny object syndrome for sure. And that's where it's like so important to have like friends who are in the business space and who can literally be like, you need to focus on this thing. Like stop trying to
Yeah.
take on all of these things. And like I've got a small community of like we call it my trauma squad. We all recognize that the reason we're all very high achieving is because of our traumas. And
Yes.
it's 100% a trauma response because it's like we feel anxiety if we aren't constantly succeeding or taking on new projects. But yeah, sometimes you just need somebody to be like, no, you need to take a chill pill.
Yes. Yeah, so that's the theme I think for 2023. Once the book is written, I want to slow down and focus more on like passive income projects
Mhm.
and less like face-to-face one-on-one coaching as much as I love doing that, it just is a lot of my
It's
time and
so
energy
much.
and yeah,
Yeah. So
I
how
need a
many
bit of a breather.
people? 100%. How many folks do you think you've coached over the last couple of years?
Oh, I've a lot. I at least like I would say 50 to 60 like one-on-one and then I've had like hundreds of students through like the self-led courses or the group programs.
Yeah, it's so much, especially that one-on-one coaching. I remember when I first quit my job, I like took on 60 one-on-one coaching clients in 1 month, and I was just like, never again. I'm going to die. It
How did
was
you do that?
it's the trauma. It's the trauma. Like that was just forcing me thinking like you're gonna fail, you're not gonna make any money. And I literally it just I mean, I will say one-on-one coaching, I'm sure you had the same experience. It made me a better teacher to the masses. Like because you really
Yeah.
understand what people are going through and what questions they're going to have. But yeah, it's like therapy what we do in so many ways. We're working through this like really heavy stuff for some people who have this shame and fear and anxiety around it. And I tend to just take that on and soak it in, and then I'm dead at the end of the day.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yep.
I also like having ADHD. I mask on calls all the time, like just
Mhm.
because my natural response would be like no emotion and people would be scared by that. So that also leads to like the exhaustion. So I have gotten good
Yeah.
at setting boundaries. Like I won't do more than 2 client calls a
Mhm.
day. And I only do 2 days a week of client calls. So
Oh,
it's
that's
like 4
great.
calls a week and that's the maximum because otherwise I will be burnt out and not be able to do anything else.
For sure. Well, I'm excited to see what you end up coming out with in the next year.
Yeah.
And I love too that you have a very specific niche that you serve. So you're specifically focusing on neurodivergent and you're also focusing on the queer community, correct?
Yeah, so I guess this is like part of my own journey right now is I kind of niche down to that, but I what I really want my niche to be is talking to maybe like a wider range of people, but the focus is on like identity-based financial stuff and like intersectional finance. So definitely like my largest kind of audience would be people who are neurodivergent or part of the LGBTQ plus community. But I basically am aiming my content at millennials and Gen Zs who are wanting a different approach to finances rather than the tangible kind of numbers tips, and like looking
Mhm.
for like, okay, I've tried these things and it didn't work. So like what else is going on?
Mhm.
And that's like, yeah, that's really what I want to do through my business, Queered Co, which is a financial literacy business. And that's part of like what I'm going to be working on in 2023 is like really branding myself well and like being clear on what the mission is. And yeah, so I guess I'm kind of like
Love
in
that. No,
between niches.
I think that's so cool. We actually have I have a mastermind that I run on the side with other finance creators in it as well. And one of our members in there has considered also pivoting more in that realm. And I'm like, you got to follow Ellyce Fulmore. She's doing it and she's doing it really well. So I think that's so important for you. And like, this wasn't in our list of questions, so I'm putting you on the spot, but
Okay.
what would you say, like examples who somebody is listening, they're like, well, why would you need to niche down in that way? Like what's a few examples of how someone who is neurodivergent may experience managing their money differently and may have different obstacles?
Yeah. So I guess like the reason I got into those niches at first in general was because I was talking about intersectional finances and I wanted to give examples for my own life. So
Mhm,
I, started talking about how being queer or being neurodivergent affects my money, and that kind of attracted those people. But it'd be
mhm,
very similar to someone who has children who's a finance creator, or a BIPOC finance creator, like talking about their lived
mhm,
experience. So those are just kind of like the examples that drew people in. But to give some specifics, like there's it on it honestly affects every single aspect of how you manage your money. But big ones are like impulsivity is big with having ADHD. So that leads to a lot of impulsive spending.
mhm,
And that's often like due to just like the way that your brain is working. We also struggle with executive function, which is, involves like planning and scheduling and prioritizing things. So that can have a
mhm,
lot of effects, like even just like scheduling when your bills come out and like remembering to pay your bills, remembering to cancel subscriptions, remembering to return items, um, remembering to eat the food in your fridge so it doesn't go
ah,
bad after you just bought
yeah.
groceries and things like that. And then when it comes to actually like managing your money, it gets very overwhelming because you don't have
Mhm,
that same skill of like looking at your money and being like, okay, this is how I should organize it. Like that same skill isn't there. It's just
mhm,
everything becomes a little more like muddied. So yeah, it becomes more challenging to stick to a budget, to pay off
mhm,
debt, to build up savings. And I know a lot of neurodivergent people too will also say that the idea of money feels so fake to them and it's like
mm,
hard to conceptualize. And so that obviously leads to a lot of issues too, because if it doesn't feel real to you, then there's kind of not the same sense of like importance behind it, or like the same connection to why you're doing certain things, like why you should be saving for retirement if it doesn't feel like money's even, a
real.
thing.
Yeah. Like there's
So
like, what is the urgency in dealing with this made up thing? Which to be fair, it is, but it is also
yeah,
very real in terms of whether it is made up, absolutely, but it is also really impacting our lives. That's so interesting and so cool, and like such a needed niche and a needed community to serve. I can think a lot of automation would be helpful, right?
yes, a lot of automation. And a big one that I forgot to mention earlier that is literally just going out of my brain right now. Speaking of ADHD, it's like the thought just drifted away. Um, I don't know if it's going to come back to me.
If it does, you can interrupt and be like, I came back. It came back.
Yes, the automation is huge, and that's
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. Dopamine. So
Mm,
we have lower levels of dopamine in our brain, and we're also motivated by different things. So like neurotypical people can say, "Oh, I should do this. Like I should be putting money away for retirement. I should be saving ahead for this vacation," and they can just go do it.
mhm,
But people with ADHD aren't motivated by shoulds. They need to be motivated by things like interest or passion or novelty or competition or challenge. So, like, there
mm,
needs to be that extra aspect involved. And money is often quite boring and very like by the books, a lot like how we're taught it traditionally. So, yeah, finding ways to like inject dopamine into financial systems, like making their budget more fun and like adding more colors or adding rewards or prizes or sticker charts or like things like that.
Love that. You gotta trademark inject dopamine to your finances. I mean, that's amazing. That was such like a clear picture. I'm like, yeah, I love that. That also, it makes me think of, I'm a huge believer in values-based budgeting, where it's like really focusing on what is the thing that you care about the most, and if you could dedicate all of your resources to, what would you want that to be, and really learning how to prioritize that. That's why I always think like and I know you think the same, the arbitrary like 50-30-20 rule, or these rules that somebody somewhere made up but doesn't apply necessarily to you in your life, are really ineffective.
Yeah, 100% agree.
I love it. Awesome. Very cool. So for you personally, what was your money journey like?
Okay, so I have, I think, a very similar origin story to a lot of people, where I grew up in a household that didn't talk about money. I did not learn financial education from my parents, and my traditional education did not have any financial literacy in it at all. So I went into university like completely financially illiterate. I did not know anything. And I've had very negative experiences, like talking to financial advisors at the bank, and just really was disconnected from it. The main things I remember my parents telling me, like the couple things they said was, save every penny you can, don't go into debt, and like go to college, get a good degree, get a good job.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to take out student loans like 2 years into my degree, and that caused a lot of guilt and shame for me, because it was like, oh, this was the thing I wasn't supposed to do, and here I am doing it. And so I felt like I couldn't go to my parents with that. So I kind of like it was almost like this little guilty secret I felt. And like, I didn't want to talk about it. And I kind of perceived all my friends around me as like doing well financially, which I now know was not true. But I kind of felt like I was the only one struggling. And so
it's so interesting how we implant these false beliefs in our like system of like, everybody else has it figured out except for me. Because I did the same thing. You're just like, I am the odd man out. But all of us do that because we just think somebody like learned something we didn't.
Yeah. And literally, like, even like every single finance creator I know would tell you that there's things that they still don't know, or things that they've, made mistakes on. And like, yeah, it's really shown me, being a part of the finance community, that like truly nobody knows it all. And we're all still kind of figuring things out.
That's life. I mean, look at the US government and the way that they're handling the student loan forgiveness. I'm always like, whenever I think like, oh, everybody has it figured out, I'm like, no, clearly, even our government here in the good old US cannot figure things out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so then I was kind of going through university, and I was also at the same time kind of struggling with this like identity crisis, because I had planned to be a physiotherapist, and that was kind of my career path. So in Canada, you need a 4-year degree first, and then you can apply for a master's in physiotherapy. So that was my trajectory, and I told everyone, and it became like a really big part of my identity, that like, I'm going to be a physiotherapist. I was a competitive gymnast for most like my whole life, so that also kind of made sense to everyone. And then partway through my degree, I was like, this is not what I want to do. And I realized it, but I felt like I couldn't let go of it. So then I was struggling with this, I have all this debt from this degree. Do I even want to finish it? What do I want to do after? And so that was really hard. And I really had my financial breaking point one year when I went to visit my sister, who lives across the country in Toronto. And I flew there, and we were hanging out, and I ended up getting strep throat while I was on that trip. And I had forgotten my healthcare card. So when I went to the doctors to get antibiotics, I had to pay out of pocket for like the appointment and the antibiotics, which I know you're familiar with being in the US. But usually that would be covered. So I go to withdraw the money, and it was $80 that I had to pay, and I only had $60 in my account. And I remember that being like the moment where I was like, I need this $80. Like, I'm not even using it to spend on something, random. Like, I actually need this money, and I don't have it in my account, and like, I should have it. And like, at the time, I had a pretty good summer job, and I was working part-time during school. So there really wasn't a reason why I shouldn't have $80 in my account. So that was kind of the breaking point where I was like, I can't keep going like this. I need to have like some sort of cushion for myself. And that's happening at the same time that this like identity crisis is happening. And that kind of is what prompted me to start learning about personal finance. And yeah, it just kind of, I guess, took off from there. And now I'm here.
Yeah. I feel like so many people have that oh shit moment where it's like, I should have this. Like, this should not be such a shock. $80 should be affordable. Or for me, it was like looking at my spending and realizing how much I was blowing on eating out and drinking. And it's like, this could be doing something for me, something that actually brings me value. For you, once you had that oh shit moment, what was like the first thing you did? I mean, I know you didn't go straight to Dave Ramsey.
I did. No, to be honest, people ask me this all the time, and there wasn't like a specific person that I can even remember learning from. Like I went to Google and I was literally like, I probably typed in like how to manage your money or like how to save money or something like very basic like that. And I was just reading a lot of like random like articles and blog posts, just from like those sites like NerdWallet and like, like those ones that always produce blog posts. So I was like reading from there, and that was kind of my starting point. And then I remember listening to some podcasts and reading some books. And I took a couple like free online courses and just started getting more into it. And then it was really the pandemic that kind of pushed everything and made this more of like, this is a career path for me versus just a random side interest.
Yeah, we have a whole generation of pandemic creators. Like, it's so interesting because there's a very clear, if you ever go to FinCon, you'll see there's a very clear divide between like the OG content creators, like the bloggers and the podcasters, the folks who were starting and creating content before the pandemic. And then it's like all of us newbies coming in with TikTok and Instagram Reels. And we're like, hey, we just like hopped into this space. But it's kind of cool to see because there is this just like new wave. There's so much information available now where even a few years ago, there weren't that many voices in the space. And if there were voices in the space, at least when I was Googling in the same way that you were Googling back in 2018, it was like you either had Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, or you had this other very niche content that was developed specifically for people who wanted to retire early. Like, it's like you only had these extremes of like Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, or retire early, have a tech job, save as much as possible. And like, that's the content that I resonated with the most. Now I'm not super into the FIRE community as I used to be, but that's what got me started was like, not this one, but yes, I'm more interested in this.
Yeah, I had the same realization. That was part of the reason why I became really motivated to make content, was because I was like, I don't see very many people my age doing this, like, especially when I started in 2020 on the platforms that I was using. Like, I have no doubt there was still a lot of them that existed. I know there's a lot of creators on Twitter and blogging, like you said. But when I looked on like Instagram or like YouTube, there wasn't a lot of really young women or just like creators talking about finance in like the way that I would talk about it. So that's like also motivated me because I was like, I wish there was someone like me to learn from. And so I'm just going to create that for other people.
I love that. So you're like, I'm going to buy a tripod and I'm going to make some TikToks.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually funny. I know one of your questions is about like me creating content, and I've created content since like probably 2012, and I've been in so many different niches. I've done like the self-love blog. I had a travel YouTube. I talked about sustainability. I had a lifting YouTube channel. I like literally have been a content creator for such a long time, which I think is such an important part of my story because it wasn't overnight. I blew up overnight, which like, okay, yes, I gained a ton of followers really fast on TikTok, but it's like, I've been creating content for so long. So like, I'm comfortable behind the camera. I'm comfortable like creating graphics and, things like that. So yeah, it's funny because like,
I love that. Because same, you and I are so similar because I did the same thing where it's like, when I really think about when I started creating content, I had a blogger like way back in the day where I was like writing my emo high school, grade school thoughts on blogger.com. I had like a MySpace blog. It was MySpace, right? Yeah. No, MySpace.
MySpace?
Yeah. MySpace. I just found a new platform. MySpace blog. And then whenever I would travel somewhere, so like I studied abroad in Spain and I did a chloedoesspain.blogspot.com. And then I had a Chloe Does China. And then eventually in 2017, when I was just like looking for something in my life to like add value and find purpose, that's when I started Clobear. But Clobear was originally a mental health blog. It was like self-care, self-love, body positivity, all of stuff. But I don't know if it was the same for you, but as I healed in a lot of those areas of my life, I didn't really feel like writing about that stuff anymore. It was like, I've done it. I don't want to ruminate on it because ruminating on it almost made me feel worse. So it was like, well, what am I really excited about right now? And it was finance. And so Clobear Money Coach was born.
Yeah. Yeah. I started life coaching right after graduation, and there was finance coaching like woven into that. I was really targeting people that were in the same boat as me, where they felt lost in university, they graduated, and now they're like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I don't know where I want to work. And I also have this like student loan debt. What do I do? And so I was helping those people. And I started that in January of 2020. And then in March of 2020, I was laid off from my part-time job, and I had so much time on my hands. And I was like, okay, what do people really need right now? And I'm like, they need help with their money because everyone's getting laid off, and they need help with their career because everyone's getting laid off. And so that's what I started creating content around. And clearly that's what people needed to hear, because, and I'm sure you found that too, is like my content took off, and I grew an insane amount during the pandemic. And then it just kind of pivoted from there. And like, I kept kind of making more pivots as I realized like, this is kind of the area that I really want to focus on.
Yeah, for sure. And for you, just more of an out of curiosity question. Are you a one-woman team, or do you have people helping you?
I have people helping me.
Okay, good. Yeah. So what does your team look like now?
So we're a little bit like in transition, I guess, but I have, I've basically for the last like year, I've had 2 very part-time employees. So they work about like between 15 and 30 hours a month.
Okay.
And one of them like was my podcast editor, and they'll do like occasional graphics for me, but I'm usually like the person who comes up with content so last minute that like I just have to create the graphic myself, and So
my gosh, I resonate with that so much. I'm like, in order for me to hire somebody to help me further than what I already have, I'm like, I have to be more organized.
Yeah. Oh, it's so hard. Like managing a team is so hard. And so they mostly do like course creation stuff. So I'll write the copy for a course, and then they'll create like the PowerPoints, and then I'll film the video, and then they'll do the closed captioning, like that kind of thing. More like admin stuff. And then my other employee was doing kind of like project management. So more like overseeing kind of like big projects. But we're kind of at a point right now where it's all hands on deck on my neurospicy money method. And that's what they've all been doing. And I'm going to kind of reassess in the new year in terms of like where I need support. And then I also have a part-time research assistant that's helping me with the book.
Very cool. That's inspiring me to get more people helping me.
Yeah, it's honestly great. Like I had this like perception that it was, so much money to outsource someone, and that I had to like outsource for a certain amount of like hours, but it can be like very casual and flexible. Like, my employees, like one of them's in university and the other one has like their own business and other like side jobs. And so we can be really flexible, and I can say, hey, do you have the capacity to work more hours this week? And they can say yes or no. And so like, we're all just really good about kind of being flexible with it. So I don't have to like have the stress of like, this is their sole income. And so I always have to work for them, which has helped a lot for my mental health.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, that's really nice. All right, you're inspiring me for 2023. Thank you, Ellyce. Send me the bill. Okay, now I do want to talk a little bit about finances in Canada, because it is so often that I get questions from folks who are followers of mine liking my content, and they're like, well, does this apply in Canada? Usually my answer is, well, you should be following Ellyce Fulmore, obviously. But also most of the stuff is very similar. The major differences are like the different brokerages, as well as your different account types and taxes. So for you, I would love to talk a little bit about TFSAs, RRSPs, and what high yield savings accounts you like, as well as brokerages. So can you tell us a little bit about TFSAs and RRSPs?
Yes. So I usually like to start this conversation by like talking about the difference between saving and investing, but I don't know if you feel like, is that something your audience is
Sure,
really
let's
clear
go for
on or
it.
should, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So saving money is when you're putting money into an account that is going to grow your money in like a very secure and guaranteed place. So your money is like not at risk at all. Whereas investing money is a strategy that you would use where you are purchasing securities and committing money in order to get a potential return. And so money, like when it comes to your financial goals and you're kind of thinking about, okay, should I be saving this money or investing this money? You want to save money that you need to be able to easily access. So this would be like your emergency fund, any big savings goals that you have like within the next 5 years, if you're saving for like a trip or a down payment or a wedding. And then also any like sinking funds, kind of like your short-term savings that you might have for gifts or celebrations or vehicle maintenance or things like that. Um, and investing is really for those goals that are, 5+ years in the future or retirement, obviously.
Yes.
So,
And I do want to put a side note in there is this, I'm sure, frustrates a lot of people, but yes, people interchange those a lot. So a lot of times we'll say saving for retirement. We don't mean putting money into a bank account to save for retirement. We mean you're investing for retirement. So
yeah,
you will, if you're consuming content, which most of you who are listening, you're consuming content. They do get interchanged a lot. So if you're ever
yes.
curious what we mean, just ask. But if you're listening to me, most of the time I'm talking about investing.
Yeah. And I definitely am guilty of that. Like I'll say saving money, but once I get to the accounts, that will both confuse things and clarify things a bit. And you'll see why, because Canada is special with their account naming. So yeah, if you're looking to save money, then I suggest putting that into a high yield savings account, which is more often referred to as a high interest savings account. Or sorry, yeah, high interest savings account. The acronym in my head was jumbled in Canada. And I love EQ Bank for that. You can open up to 5 different high interest savings accounts. They're free to open. There's no minimums, no account fees. And you can name them all different things depending on what you're saving for. And they have the highest interest rate, or one of the highest interest rates in Canada at 2.5%. And they're also now available in Quebec. So all my
Oh,
Quebecers,
nice.
I know you've been not able to access them for so long and they're now coming. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, and I feel like all of the Canadian influencers recommend EQ Bank specifically for the high interest savings accounts.
Yeah, there's not really a lot of competition. Like I know in the US, there's a lot more that are kind of
Mhm.
doing similar things, and there's not really a competitor that has the same capabilities as EQ Bank, in my
Okay.
opinion.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then savings could also be stored in a GIC, which are comparable to a CD in the
Mm.
US. They're like slightly different, but basically the same idea. So a GIC is a guaranteed investment certificate. And essentially, how it works is you choose your term. So essentially, how long you want to put the money up for. And that money is locked into that account for the term. And then the amount of interest that you earn is determined by the term that you choose. And like typically, a longer term gets you a higher interest rate up to a point, and then it will start to like go down again. Um, and GICs are good for big savings goals that are several years away because while the money's in there, you can't access it, you can't take it out. But if you like are saving for a down payment, for example, and let's say you already have like half of your down payment saved and you know you're not going to have the rest saved for another 2 years, then you could put that first half into a GIC for 2 years, earn extra interest than you would in the high interest savings account, and then take it out at the end. So that's like the one, I guess, additional option for saving.
Yeah, and just like a high interest savings account, it's completely secure. You're not going to lose that money unless you took the money out early, which you may have a penalty, but they're usually pretty small.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, right now, I'm not sure what the like CD rates are in the US, but in Canada, the GIC rates are very good. So it's like, I think it might have slightly changed, but last time I checked, it was 5% on a 1 year GIC. So
What? Are
yeah.
you kidding me? That's way better. Now I have to look up CD. Let me just look at a Chase one. Okay, we're Googling. Chase, I feel like has one of the most common, other than awful ones. What do they have right now? They're not even advertising it. So for a really long time, and actually even recently, I would say high yield savings accounts are offering more than CDs, which to me is like, well, why would you even go with a CD then? Okay, Ally. Ally's high yield CD is, drum roll please. Okay, it's like a 0.5% higher. That's it. So it's 4.15% versus 3.3%. So you guys got a better deal out there.
Well, our high interest savings account is at 2.5 right now, so
Okay.
it's lower. So,
Yeah.
it equals out maybe. But yeah, GICs were the same. Like they typically weren't really worth it for a long time, but right
Mhm.
now the rates are really great. So for in Canada, that's double what the high interest savings account rate is. So it's definitely worth it as long as you know that you're not going to need that money. So don't put
Mhm.
your emergency fund in a GIC.
Yes, no, I get, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. So then moving into your initial question, finally, the TFSA and RRSP. So TFSA stands for tax-free savings account, which goes back to what I said earlier, where this is confusing the whole saving versus
Confusing names, yeah.
the government of Canada really messed up because it should be called a tax-free investment account because it's for investing and not for saving. So I don't know who made that decision,
Yeah,
but
I've
here we
literally
are.
had to convince some of my Canadian clients that like, no, you can invest in this account, even though it's called a savings account.
And you know what's shocking is so many banks and like advisors that work at banks will tell people to use their TFSA for like vacation savings for their emergency fund. And like that is what they will tell them to do. And I don't know like where the misconception is happening. Like if it's because it says savings account that they're just being told to save money in there, but
Wild.
don't, use your TFSA for very long-term savings, like things you don't need for a long time, or like honestly, basically just retirement.
Mhm. Yeah,
um,
and so the TFSA is basically like a much better Roth IRA in the US because you can put a lot more in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, how it works is the tax free portion applies to the interest that you earn. So after you put money in, any interest that you're earning on investments, you don't get taxed on. Whereas you're taxed on like the money that you put into it is taxable income.
Mhm.
And yeah, the last couple of years, the contribution room has been $6,000 a year, meaning you can put $6,000 into your TFSA. Next year, it's going to be 6,500, which is awesome. And the really great thing is that the contribution room carries over. So
Mhm.
since 2009, when the account was created, when you turned 18, if you turned 18 past that, or however many years you have since 2009 of being 18, you have of contribution room. So many of you who like probably have way more money than you realize of contribution room especially if you haven't invested in your TFSA before, if you just started. And you can actually check if you log into your CRA account, it will let you know your available limit. It is like a little bit behind. Like I think it only updates like in January every year. So if you did contribute money this year, it won't be updated, but it'll at least give you like a starting point. Cause you might say, like, it might
Right.
say like $60,000 and you're like, okay, I'm good. Cause I'm not going to put $60,000 in 1 year. So,
Right.
yeah, that's like the really great part is that the room just carries over. So many of you probably have thousands of dollars worth that you can catch up on.
Which I love, and I think that's so cool. I wish that was something that we would do as well because we have the same limits, but we don't have that catch-up room.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
So then the RRSP stands for Registered Retirement Savings Plan. Again with the savings. At least
Like
it
I
is
said,
retirement, though.
we're talking, it's interchangeable.
So this is like kind of opposite of TFSA in terms of like the taxes. So you if you put money into an RRSP, you can get a tax deduction. So and you can do it that year, or you can also save it and claim it on later years, which I'm not sure if you have that. Do you have that ability in the US too to like claim it at a later date?
So you would explain how you claim it. What does that mean?
So like if I put like $10,000 into my RRSP this year, when I go to file my income taxes, I would like tell them, hey, I put $10,000 into my RRSP, and then I would
Oh.
get the like deduction on my taxes.
And you can
Like,
you can save that for future years?
yeah, so you can claim it when you are making more money so that you get so the tax deduction is more beneficial for you.
Y'all are so flexible and understanding. No, ours is like it is set in stone. You cannot decide when you take your deduction. You have to take it. But I will say we have, and I don't know if you guys also have our equivalent of our tax-free is the Roth. And so a lot of RRSPs I equate most equivalently, most closely to a 401k, 403b, 457. And for us, a lot of employers are now offering Roth 401ks and Roth TSPs and things like that. So we do have the opportunity to at least get that tax-free growth in our 401ks as well. Do you guys have that for the RRSP?
So like in Canada, it's like pension plans is what, we would call them. And those usually are invested inside of your RRSP.
Gotcha. And it's always going to be pre-tax.
Yes.
Because we're dealing with so many different acronyms where I'm like, well, the closest equivalent would be a 401k. It's not exactly the same as an RRSP, but
in the US.
Well, an IRA is most like the TFSA, actually.
But you have the IRA and the Roth IRA.
Right. But they're the same thing. They're the same thing. They're just different tax treatments. So the TFSA is like is exactly a Roth IRA without the catch-up contributions. You can't do that. The RRSP, I believe specifically the group RRSP is the one that you can have through your employer, right?
No, so the RRSP is like a type of account like the TFSA.
But
it's just that's typically the like route that pension plans, like they'll invest through that. There probably is.
Gotcha.
I mean, I shouldn't really speak a lot on this, but there probably is pension plans that go through the TFSA. I'm not up on all the like corporate pension plan, but I know that RRSP is like the most commonly, like your pension will be invested inside of your RRSP most commonly. But you can also like, I can have an RRSP. Like, it's not like a 401k. Like I couldn't have a 401k in the US, right? Because I don't work for.
You could. So that's why I'm like, they are, yes. So they are most similar to the 401k, but it sounds like the 401k it kind of be like, I'm trying to think of a way to explain this. We'll probably cut this portion out because it's confusing both of us.
Yeah.
Like, if it's confusing us, it's going to confuse other people. But yeah. So from my understanding of it, there's different types of RRSPs. And like, the RRSP, from what you're saying, is the account type. The type of investments that go into it are going to differ, whether it's like a pension or if it's like self-directed. Is that what you're saying?
No. So,
okay.
Well, yeah. So the investment, like the securities, I guess, like wouldn't be a pension. It's that like your pension plan would be like, oh, we're investing in these like mutual funds inside of your RRSP.
Okay, and then the pension plan is through your workplace. So like if you have a job that offers you a pension, the pension, you can't like go in and pick your own investments, right?
Yeah, not usually. Like usually from the clients I've worked with, like they'll usually receive a couple options. Like you can choose like, your risk level, or like sometimes you can have, I think some companies do offer more like self-directed where you can have a little bit more, or like a combination, a little bit more control. But yeah, for the most part, it's like for big companies, it's going to be like, this is the plan we've already chosen.
Okay, gotcha. So it's like you may have, so the pension is like most like I guess the thing that's confusing us is that I'm trying to equate it most to like something in the US, but it doesn't sound like there's a direct equivalent because we don't have, like we do have pensions, but usually the pension, you can't pick it's invested in. But it sounds like your pensions are most similar to a 401k, but they still go through an RRSP, which is the confusing part for us.
And the RRSP is like you pay taxes on the money that you withdraw, but you can not pay taxes on the money that's put in.
Yes. Okay. And the RRSP could be like It could have a pension in it, or it could also be like a self-directed, you pick your own
Yes.
mutual funds. So I would still say that it's most similar to a 401k. The biggest difference is that there's no way, we don't have a way to direct a pension through a 401k, to my understanding. We do have like, you could put an annuity in there, but like nobody would do that. So, okay, sorry for the confusion.
Okay, wait, there's also, okay, this might be the other confusion, is that there's also like, you know what? No, I'm just gonna, never mind. I'm just gonna leave it. We're getting down a wormhole.
Find where our wormhole started, and I'll tell Elevate to cut from there to there. So let's start over to, I think the last thing that we were talking about that was like coherent was
start over at the RSP.
Yeah, let's just talk about RSPs.
Okay.
So tell us about an RRSP.
Okay, so RRSP stands for Registered Retirement Savings Plan. So again, with the savings, but at least we have retirement in there, which is more clear. Right. So this is like kind of like the opposite of TFSA in terms of how it's taxed. So when you deposit money, you can get a tax refund on that. So you can basically kind of like not pay taxes on the money that you're putting in, but then you will be taxed on the money that you're withdrawing. So whenever you go to take out money from your RSP, you will be taxed on that. You can also carry forward your RSP contributions if you want to claim them in the future when your income is higher and the tax break would be more beneficial. Because depending on where you fall in the tax brackets, you know, getting a tax deduction might not actually bring you down a bracket, right? So it might not really have an impact, but maybe it would in a couple of years when you get a raise and you're kind of more on the cusp. So then it might be more beneficial to use then.
That's really nice. Yeah, we don't have that here. Like they don't allow that level of flexibility, unfortunately.
Yeah. And then the contribution room, like the amount that you can actually put into your RSP, will vary based on your income. So it's calculated as a percentage of your income up to like there's a max amount. So that's a big difference between the TFSA and RSP too. Like everyone is not given the same contribution room. And with the RSP, contributions stop at age 71. So you can't put any money in it after that. Whereas like the TFSA is a lot more flexible. You can continue to put money until you're 100, however long you want. Nice. And you can also withdraw money from the TFSA with no penalty. Whereas with the RRSP, you can withdraw for certain things like buying a home or continued education or things like that. But you do have to repay that amount that you take out within a certain number of years. So it's really like, they've really set it up so it's like, you should basically be mostly just using this for retirement, maybe if you want to buy a home or something along the way. Whereas the TFSA can be used like, it should also be a big part of your retirement, but you can kind of use it for other goals along the way with more flexibility.
Okay, and so for the RRSP, are you able to access the TFSA? Sorry, let me switch that. For the TFSA, you can access the money at any time. You don't have to like the earnings and the contributions. It's not like gate kept until retirement.
Yeah, it's not gate kept. Like you can access it, but I guess you know, if the money's invested into something, then it's not like accessible as like a savings account because you still have to jump through the hoops of like filling out the paperwork and you know, actually getting access to that money. So it's which actually brings me to my next point, that putting money into a TFSA is not actually investing yet. So doing that is kind of treating it like a high interest savings account. You're just like putting money into that like guaranteed and safe account. But you actually need to invest that money into something to engage in the act of investing. So
yes, let's say that again. Let's say that again, because we talk about that a lot here in the US as well, is that Roth IRA is not an investment, just like a TFSA is not an investment unless you go and invest that money. It's the container for your investments.
I always say it's like a vehicle, right? It's like sitting on your driveway. The TFSA is a vehicle, but then you can't actually get to where you want to go, which is like your retirement, unless you put fuel in the vehicle. And the fuel is like the investments that you are actually purchasing, securities that you're purchasing and investing in. So that would be like, you know, your index funds, bonds, stocks, ETFs,
Yes.
whatever.
And I want to highlight that. So a lot of folks are always like, well, are index funds available in Canada? And yes, they absolutely are. So in your RRSP or in your TFSA, do you have the ability to invest in whatever you want in both of those types of accounts, or does it depend?
You can invest in whatever you want, depending on how you open your account. So I'm sure this is similar in the US. If you're opening through a bank, like opening those accounts through a bank, most likely they're going to be very limited options in terms of what you can invest in, because banks are businesses and they want you to invest in their products. So
Mhm.
there is probably not like unlimited, here's you can invest in all these things. If you open through an online brokerage, then you have potentially more control depending on what route you choose there. So you can either go a self-directed route through an online brokerage where you have complete control. So you're picking everything, you have to balance your portfolio, you're doing all of that. Or you can also go a robo-advisor route, which you still have some control, but you have less control. So usually you kind of pick your general package and it's a bunch of investments kind of bundled up together. You choose what your risk tolerance is and how long the money's going to be in there. And then
Mhm.
they do the work for you and you just like send them money.
Yes,
So
yes.
yes, but within both the TFSA and the RSP, you have the ability to do self-directed investing.
Okay, and then for the RRSP, when we were talking off camera briefly, the RRSP, anybody can open it. So it's like even if you didn't have a job or you didn't have earned income, or do you have to have earned income? Tell us, like, who are the types of people who can open these accounts?
Anyone can open the accounts if you are a Canadian citizen
Okay. And
and
you can
above the age of
contribute.
18.
It's not like you don't have to have earned income. It's like anybody can put into it.
Oh, well, sorry. I guess, yeah, the RSP, your contribution room is determined by your income.
Oh yeah.
So I guess, yeah, if you had zero income, I'm actually not 100% sure what happens if there's like a
Okay.
very minimum amount, but um, yeah. So I
Okay.
guess like you would want to be, and obviously you wouldn't be contributing to it if you weren't earning any income. So
Right, right. Well, and listen,
yeah.
the reason I ask is always the spouse. Like if you were a stay-at-home mom or something, do they have like a spousal
Oh, yes.
RRSP?
So kind of like the consensus in terms of like how, again, I don't know the ins and outs of like tax filing
Hmm.
for couples in Canada. It gets very confusing. I'm definitely not a tax professional, but it works out to be more beneficial for both people to be utilizing their accounts
Okay.
rather than like having combined investment accounts, because yeah, they're honestly like, especially the TFSA is like such a good and powerful tool in Canada. Like we are
Yeah.
very lucky to have it. And so it's like, why not both take advantage of that account?
Hmm.
And then I know that there's some sort of impact on how you're then filing your taxes with those accounts as well.
Hmm.
I think it affects like how you get taxed.
Hmm.
So yeah, not the tax professional here. So refer to
No,
someone else
for
for that.
sure. Yes.
But
Disclaimer. This is meandering, pondering.
yeah, for most
And
people, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, for most people, you'll most likely want to focus on maxing out your TFSA first and
Hmm.
then moving to an RSP. And like eventually, it'd be great for you to have both. Like that would be the goal, because even with the max amount in the TFSA, you'd probably have like around 1 million at retirement, which most people need more than that to retire now with
Hmm.
inflation. So you'd want to be utilizing your TFSA and your RSP. But yeah, a lot of people get hung up on which one to start with. And I also know a lot of advisors will say RSP, like that's the go-to recommendation.
Hmm.
But my recommendation is like your default should be TFSA if you're not sure, because there's like more flexibility to it and you don't have to like worry as much about the tax breaks and like how much you're earning and how much you're going to earn in retirement. And yeah, I know Bridget Casey, who is another Canadian personal finance creator, she actually did the math breaking down like the pre versus post tax deductions of like RSP and TFSA, and like the difference is so negligible. So you can't really go wrong. But I think just like because of the flexibility of the TFSA, that's the one I would default to like starting with.
100%. That's what we talk about with Roth IRAs as well. Is like most of the time you're going to want to go that route instead, unless you are trying to get some tax savings or something along those lines. But that is really cool and really nice that anybody can open up an RRSP if they've got earned income, as far as we know. Because in the US, your 401k is tied to your employer. Now you can, as a self-employed individual, go and open a solo 401k. But like somebody who is side gigging or who is maybe doing part-time work and their employer doesn't offer them a 401k, you're kind of SOL and you just have to go the IRA or taxable brokerage route. So it's nice that you guys do have that flexibility.
Yeah, it's great.
Very cool. I always am baffled by how better the accounts are in other places. Like if you've ever listened to or heard of the accounts in the UK, I'm always just like, what? You get how much tax free? It's crazy.
Okay, well, I am jealous of the American mortgage rate.
Oh yeah, because you guys have variable, right?
So you can have in the US, you already know this, but you can have a 30-year fixed mortgage. In Canada, 5 years is the maximum.
That's crazy. Yes, I saw Bridget Casey talking about that, where she was like, yeah, every 5 years it renews. And so your mortgage could just go up drastically, right?
Yeah, which is what's happened. Like so many people purchased homes during the pandemic, right? When the prices were really low. And so they got like a 1.5% interest rate on their mortgage. And now they're all going to be renewing in like 2024, 2025. And their mortgage payment could potentially go up thousands a month.
Like that certainly is an argument in favor of renting.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. That's terrifying.
That's crazy. Like to all of a sudden have, and like, to be fair, I know that a landlord could raise the prices on rent at any time, but most of the time it's not going to be thousands of dollars. But like being at the mercy of a mortgage payment or an interest rate like that would really suck.
Yeah. And the thing about like rentals are like usually you would renew kind of every year.
Mm-hmm.
So if they do go up, but then the prices go down again, so would your rent. So like that would follow. Whereas like, yeah, the mortgages, then once you renegotiate, you're locked in for another 5 years. And then you know, unless you go to variable, which is a
whole other beast. Taking a gamble. Yeah, let's go. Oh yeah. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. We'll take the win.
And you have Target, so
we do have Target. I can't believe Target's not in Canada.
Well, we actually briefly had Target. Target did come to Canada, and it was awful. Like it was not the US Target at all.
Like, I kind of remember that story. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like Walmart. Like it was like them just doing Walmart. But I was like, no, we want like the cool, fun things that Target has for like the cheap prices. You know, we want the like donut coffee and like all of this. And yeah, we didn't get it. So they all went out of business because like everyone was like, this is not the American Target.
Well, you'll just have to hop across the border to come visit our wonderful Targets here.
Yes, you will. I will definitely come visit you in San Diego because
yes,
one of my best friends also lives there. So
I'm so down. We would love that. I'll be definitely heading out there next year. So, all right, I got 2 more questions for you, and then I'll let you go. First one: tell people where they can find you, promote yourself. How can they work with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on most actively Instagram and TikTok. So Instagram is my name, Ellyce.Fulmore. And I'll just let you go to the show notes for that because yeah, it's easier than spelling it out.
Yeah.
And then my TikTok is queered, which is like queer with a D on the end, .co. And that's my business name as well. And I do also have a podcast called Keep Finance Queered. I haven't put out a new episode in a while. We finished the first season, but you can go and catch up on the whole first season. And yeah, ways to work with me right now. I do have some clients on the wait list for 2023. So if you want to join the wait list to work with me one-on-one, I also have a lot of self-led courses and a mini course library where I have 6 different mini courses on like specific areas like savings or paying off debt, which is great to kind of dive into for the new year, just kind of like a bite-sized piece. So yeah, you can do that as well. And Yeah, just follow me. Honestly, is the best way. I love talking to people. I am the person who answers every single DM. I don't have anyone that's ever taken on my DM. So if you message me, you'll be talking to me, and I would love to chat with you.
Wow, that's impressive. Wow, well done. That's awesome. So awesome. We will leave notes and or links to. Man, I can't talk. We will leave links in the show notes to all of those things. So my final money question is for you. What is your very first money memory?
This is, oh my gosh, this is so funny because I literally I wrote about this in my book and I don't remember.
No.
Okay, this is because, I'm taking
What's
this.
the first one you can think of right now?
Okay, so yeah, so this is part of the thing. When I was like trying to think of my first money memory, I was like, part of the reason why I don't feel like I have money memories is because, well, one, I don't remember a lot of my childhood because of ADHD, not because of trauma, just I forget big chunks of time. But also because I feel like money was so not talked about that like there just was hardly any I don't know, acknowledgement of any of that like money stuff.
Right.
So I'm like, what did I even put in the book? But I know I have like a memory of shoplifting when I was really little, like accidentally shoplifting. I feel like every child has this of like being like, Mom, can I buy this? And then her being like, no. And then I just like walk out holding it. It's like,
yep, I've done that. I had a whole little stint where I was a little thief.
yeah. So I remember that. I definitely my most prominent money memory, which is like when I was a lot older, but when I first applied for student loans, initially when I started university, your eligibility was based on your parents' income. So I had to put in my parents' like tax return information to apply. And so I remember asking my dad, like, hey, what was like line 150 of your tax return so I can put it in? And he takes my laptop from me, goes into a different room, fills it out, goes like past it on the forms, like would not tell me. Like I had no idea how much my dad made. I had no idea. And then I get denied for student loans because my parents made too much. And like I didn't even live with my parents. I had moved out when I was 18. They did not financially support me. Like they did not pay for any of my school. And so it was so wild to me where I was like, how much do you make then? Because like what? And you don't make enough to like pay for my school? Like what's happening? And they
Wild.
finally like 2 or 3 years into, I think it was like the second year of university, they changed it so that you didn't need your parents' income information, which is how it should be because a lot of people like, you know, don't have a good relationship with their parents or don't, haven't lived with their parents in years. And so that was very strange. But that is like one of the most prominent money memories that I have and that really stuck with me and that I've continually brought up to my parents. And like, it's funny. They're very open now to, I ask them questions all the time and I'll be like, you need to tell me, it's important to talk about it. They've gotten so much better, but yeah.
Oh, I love
first money memory.
No, that's such an interesting one because the money memories, they always make me think of like all the ways that it impacts us that we don't even initially realize. And I can see how that one would be like money is taboo. We don't talk about it. And not only that, going in the opposite direction eventually and being like, I'm going to talk to everybody about this because it's so important and it shouldn't be that way. So very, very interesting the way that those all seep into it. I'll have to read your book to figure out what your actual first money memory was. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was a pleasure finally getting to meet you face to face or screen to screen.
Yes, this was so great. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Ellyce is such a wonderful human being. And I think we got a lot of information in there. So I hope you enjoyed it and learned a little bit more if you are particularly Canadian, but definitely check out Ellyce Fulmore. She's incredible on all the places. So check out the show links down below to get access to all of that. And a friendly reminder, since we are talking about personal finance and investing and things along those lines, nothing on the show is intended as personal finance advice or financial advice. We are not financial advisors. We're just educating folks on the options that are out there and helping you do your own research so you can make better decisions in your own personal finance life. So if you want to check out the terms and conditions of the show, be sure to head on over to the show notes down below. And of course, if you are starting your money journey and you're like, Chloe, I don't know where to begin and I need some education on what to do, we've got a free guide available to you. So check those out in the show notes as well. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much for stopping by.